I'm Mary Lutz, and I am here today to tell you about the sixth episode of the documentary series that we're filming about unknown history of Walton County. And today's story, I almost should be able to say, once upon a time, because this is a story about 40 years ago when there was no library in South Walton. Now, most of you watching this video were not here in 1985 and 1986. But this was a very small community. Highway 98 was one lane in each direction. The biggest community here was Sandestin. Seascape was here. And Seaside was only just beginning. So it was very, very quiet. Mostly beaches, a lot of snowbirds. Well, there were a number of people that lived here and they loved to read. And they said, darn, the closest library is 35 miles away in Defuniak. We need a library. So they did a little bit of investigating and they found out that the state really did not recommend starting libraries in communities where there were fewer than 5,000 people. And a letter that we have here in this wonderful scrapbook that is kind of falling apart, too bad, but it is 40 years old. And the first page here talks about how it's not recommended to start a library and not, what is this sentence? It says, to spend money wisely. Now, what could be a wiser spending of money than starting a library? So there were a couple of people that said, we're going to do it anyway. And without any money, without a place to even put a library, and without any books, they said, okay, we're doing it. And they did. One of the first problems that they solved was how to raise money. They started the Friends of the Coastal Branch Library, which is a 5013C charitable organization registered in the state of Florida. And that enabled them to have a variety of fundraising and lots of donations. Basically, we are still doing the same thing for the library in supporting the services. There are a couple of people that still live in this area 40 years later who were very involved and very important in starting the library. And those are the folks that you are going to hear from next.
Hi, my name's David Kramer. I've lived in South Walton since 1981 and was a property manager of the heartbeat of the community where the post office was, the Kano Square and the F&S Plaza, from about 1983 to 1986 or 7, something like that. In the time I was at the Kano Square and F&S Plaza managing the properties, one of the tenants ran a gift shop. Her name was Marilyn Coe and her partner Nancy Bickerstaff. They came to me one day and said, Dave, because Nancy and Marilyn and I always exchanged stories about what we were reading at the time, because the way I was raised, I was a reader, and Marilyn obviously was, and I think she had a history in library sciences even before then. So the girls came to me and said, you know, how about you find a space in here where we can start a library? Because at that time, we had the once a week, sometimes if we were lucky, the twice a week bookmobile would stop at the plaza, something that I helped to coordinate with the library up in Defuniak, so the bookmobile would have a place and we'd have a place to exchange books that you were looking for. Well, Marilyn says, approach the owners, you're good at this. So I did. I went to Joe Cano and Carmen Flores were the guys that owned each half of the plaza. There were a couple of industrialists from Chicago, Cuban-born and made very good for themselves, and they were pretty well-to-do and carried on their businesses still in Chicago while they had me running the shopping center for them down there through Fagan Realty. Bill Fagan was my employer at the time. Anyway, I went to Joe. Joe had a space that we eventually used for the first library in South Walton. It was his museum. It was probably about 600 square feet, not much bigger than the room I'm in today. And it was full of taxidermied trophies of his big game hunting around the world. I mean, you went inside, there were grizzly bears, lions, tigers, and it was going to be difficult to get Joe to move it, but I talked the language he liked to hear, deductions. And we figured out a way that we could move his menagerie, and he donated the space for the use of the first library. And then at that point, went back to Marilyn, and she spread the word around, and I have a friend named Willie Skibby, and her parents, Kay and Art Skibby, were really integral in the initiation of getting a bunch of volunteers together and let's talk about what we need to do to make it a little more organized. So we cleaned up the space, helped Joe get the stuff out of there, and we started a library by, first we had a meeting and we decided what to call ourselves, and I guess it was Friends of the Coastal Branch Library at that time. And it may still be that. 40 years and memory's not the best thing served on me anymore. But it was a good time. It was more my mother's doing than anything, because that's the way she raised me, was to be a reader. And there wasn't a library except in Defuniak at the time, and bookstores weren't prevalent, and there was no Amazon or internet. So it was, you wanted to expand your horizons, you had to try around here. Well, we had our first meeting. It was successful. Everybody came away from it energized, and we began fundraising, collecting books, and creating, the volunteers built the shelves, what we got donated. It quickly, the donations, I would say within 6 months, probably outgrew the space we had, which was just heartwarming. It was good to see that there were that many people tucked away in South Walton that had books that they wanted to share. And it was pretty much a labor of love, I guess is the right way to call it.
Hi, my name is Margot Morgan Urick. I've been in Walton County for 4 generations. And back in 1986, I was pregnant with my first child, and I volunteered at the Lending Library with John Foster. It was very good experience. I enjoyed working with everyone. The library was very small. It was smaller than our current bookstore. We didn't have a whole lot of traffic, but then John managed to rent a larger space, which was a storefront, and things grew from there. I had my child, so I wasn't able to volunteer, but when she turned around 2 years old, I would bring Mandy to the children's hour at the library, which was a lot of fun. We had Miss Kellogg ran the children's hour, and she was a wonderful, wonderful woman. When the kids arrived, she would give them all a small American flag, and then she would put on the John Philip Sousa music, marching band music, and the children would walk in a big circle around the room. And then she would read to them, and they just always had a good time. In fact, Miss Kellogg found out my family raised goats, and she asked me to bring a baby goat to the library, which I did, and the librarian had to kind of look the other way on that, but it was a lot of fun. It was kids with kids, basically. But she was fun. I would bring, every once in a while, bring a little goat to the library. My dad raised goats, and he was a man that was in the Navy veteran, and he didn't have but a 10th grade education, but his favorite books were the Encyclopedia Britannicus. So we come from a long line of readers. But Miss Kellogg was very special to our community. She started Caring and Sharing in Fort Walton Beach and moved it out here. And then she and her husband donated a piece of land on the bay, which is a nice little park off of Nellie Drive. And it's going to be a bird sanctuary and nature center. So she was very important to the community. I also worked with Nona Smith. She was a part-time librarian, and she was such a sweet lady. It was like, hanging out with your grandma. She was very, very nice. But reading's always been important to the family. My great-grandmother did not know how to read, and she would send her children in a boat across the St. Andrews Bay to school so they could learn how to read, which was quite a journey. Just to learn how to read. But I don't think without the public insisting that we would be here today, almost 40 years, with a real library. It's phenomenal what's been done. And
I'm Bob Mueller. I retired from the Air Force after 30 years and worked in General Dynamics, and we moved here in 1992. And my wife was very active in the Friends and dragged me along to support her. So I was the logistics person, and she was the one that ran the show. So, but we've been here now. I was here 32 years. She passed away 2 years ago. And we've enjoyed South Walton and the library, and she was a story time person for the library and for the area. She did story time at several schools around here, and we've really enjoyed being here in South Walton for all these years. And after we got settled, we both like to read books, and we ended up finding out that the library was over by the post office, and just a little hole in the wall, really, and their hours were very poor. And we found out that they had a Friends of the Library club. And so we joined that Friends of the Library. And the Friends, for many years until the library was built, we used to have tour homes. And we'd spend several months talking people into showing their homes. And usually it was the big homes in the area. I mean, really unusual homes. And we'd talk them into showing those homes, and then we would sell tickets. We had a real good group. And then we finally got approval to build a library, and the state gave the county $500,000. The county had $500,000, and we had $800,000. Actually, it was over $800,000. But so the county drew up the plans, and they wanted the Friends just to turn over the money. And Doris had gotten elected president of the Friends, and so knowing how government agencies worked, I said, no, we're not going to give them the money. That we'll give it to you in proportion as you go along, because we felt like that if we just gave them the money, they'd do whatever they wanted to, and we wouldn't get what we wanted. Well, as it turned out, as soon as we saw the plans, we had a problem, because we wanted a room, a meeting room, you know, where they could have story time for the kids and different clubs and stuff meeting there. The county said, no, we're not going to do that. And we said, well, fine, you don't get any money. So, you know, I mean, if you want $800,000, you're going to have a store or a meeting room. And so they finally agreed, and we doled the money out along as we went along. And then we had several donors that donated things, like the one lady that was connected with one of the big chains. She donated all the stuff for the outside recreation area in the back of the library. And so anyway, we went along and got it built. And once we got it built, then the friends, we bought all the computers. Actually, I bought them, but with the friends' money. But we bought all the computers and stuff for the library. And we decided that we needed a projector and screens and stuff for the meeting room. So we bought the gear, and another guy that was good with electronics, and I installed all that stuff, the overhead projector and all that sort of thing. We did that.
One of the things that's really very significant is that all happened in 1986, and then in 1987, the Friends of the Library became a 5013C through the state of Florida, which was a huge help in terms of being able to collect and raise money to get donations that were tax-free. One of the people that was very instrumental in helping start the library and doing a lot of the professional organizing was Marilyn Coe. Now, Marilyn, before moving to Santa Rosa Beach, had been a librarian. And fortunately, the county discovered that about her and was in need of a library director. They hired her, and that was wonderful. She was able to do a great deal for the entire county, as well as to guide the Friends in their development, and she was terrifically enthusiastic. One of the stories that you'll see from the scrapbook collection is how she and a friend went and flew down to Key West and collected a bookmobile that was, for whatever reason, free. And Walton County didn't have a bookmobile that was an actual bookmobile. They had an old van that they had jury-rigged with a whole bunch of books that they threw in the back, and that didn't work too well, and didn't look too good. So anyway, she and her friend drove this bookmobile back from, can you imagine, from Key West? She went on later as the director of the library to apply to the state for the initial funding and was able to get a grant from the state, because by about, the early 1990s, it was very clear that we had outgrown Cano Square and the library really needed a nice new professional library building. Marilyn was able to get a grant of $500,000 from the state. The Friends of the Library, by this time, were able to raise funds and promised $250,000, which the county agreed to match. And a new library was supposed to be able to be built for a mere $1 million. And like a lot of really good stories, there were a few hiccups. One of those hiccups was trying to find a place for the library, and that ended up in, a number of different lawsuits, as the property that we now know as this whole government annex, South Walton Annex, was originally owned by the state and was a conservation area. The county, in purchasing that land from the state, originally had a plan that they called Newtown, which would include a very large housing subdivision. And the conservation people got involved, and there were lawsuits, and time was kind of running out because the grant needed to be spent, and plans needed to be drawn for for designing the building.
As soon as we got that meeting room made, the county wanted to take it over and use it for all their meetings. And it got to the point where we couldn't even schedule anything for our own meeting room. I mean, that's how dumb they were. And we finally just cut them off and said, no, you'll have to schedule it amongst or along with our programs. And so we started doing that. One of the things, my wife loved kids, and so she started doing story time. And she was working at the time. She was working as a nurse in the county nurse. But she did that in her spare time, told stories over there on Saturdays, and had the kids meet, and it was a lot of fun. We both played the instruments, the mandolin, and she had a mandolin, left-handed one. I had a right-handed one that drove the kids nuts because one was facing one way and one was facing the other. The kids started going to that library after school, and they'd stay there until their parents picked them up in the evening. They'd spend 2 or 3 hours in there, and that was great because they had computers, they had all the books, they were doing their homework in there. And I think that's fantastic that they have something like this just a couple blocks away that they can walk to and take part in. And there's usually about 20 or 30 kids in there every night. I think it's fantastic that they have that. And there's some of the kids that are going to the junior college that come back there and can do research in there that they have to do for their school program. So I think all of that together that library is fantastic. And I think now it's in a better location than it would have been over on 393 because they've got that youth center behind, they've got the courthouse there, the library, everything's right there.
My life was to finally get a South Walton library card. I mean, other than the bookmobile. I had the Walton County Library card from Defuniak. Remember when I came into this building and got a new library card? It was a good day. I mean, it felt good to me. My daughter was with me. She got her library card. She's little. I tried to relate some of the story, but when they're a little kid, it's like, yeah, talk to the hand.
It was interesting, and I think very significant in the history of the library, is that the community became always very involved. There were community forums that were held so that various groups within the community could come in and say, well, this is what we think that our new library building should be able to provide in terms of areas for art displays, for large group gatherings, for historical collections and displays. And this was all incorporated into the architectural design. It was probably about, I believe, the late 1990s, 1998, 1999, and you can see from some of the headlines that we're showing that came from the scrapbooks that fortunately were kept from the very beginning of the Friends of the Library and the library formation, that the building construction finally began, I believe it was 1999, and the library actually was completed in 2001, and the open for business in early 2002. And the role of the Friends has never really changed a lot. We still, our mission as a charitable organization is to provide whatever kinds of funding we can through grants, through membership in the Friends, to supplement the budget that the library has annually. So our role in that sense has never changed, but very fortunately, we don't actually run the library on a day-to-day basis. We have a perfectly fine, wonderful, competent, professional staff. And so when you look back to 1988, when we started out with a yearly budget of $1,500 and one part-time staff member, this is really quite a remarkable story. And it basically is a story about community, community working with our government people, and providing the kind of social center that is really so important to the quality of life where we live here.
Hello, I'm Katie Cerise, the Library Director for the Walton County Public Library System. The library system is a department of the Walton County Board of County Commissioners and is comprised of all of the libraries in Walton County. Our libraries have evolved over the years, with our first branch beginning in 1887, and here we are today in the Coastal Branch Library. Our libraries were created as a place for books and community connection, and as our world has changed over the years and over the decades, our libraries have really morphed into more of a community center and a community hub for innovation and learning, community, and lifelong education. We offer not just books, not just internet. We've evolved to programs and not your traditional story times and book clubs, but things like anime clubs, chess clubs, our esports learning, all sorts of different types of entry, technology, STEM. And we not only circulate books, but we have DVDs, our library of things, which includes our mobile Wi-Fi hotspots, computers, Chromebooks for people to circulate, microscopes, telescopes, ukuleles. We have STEAM learning kits, tablets, read-along books, all types of materials for all generations and all ages to find at the libraries.
Hello, welcome. I'm Linda Thompson. I'm the branch manager librarian here at Coastal Branch Library, and I love to go out and walk and talk with people that are visiting the library. I see they're interested in a particular item or book, and we'll strike up a conversation. How did you get interested in baking pies and creating all these cream pies? And have you ever considered giving a demonstration on how to go about doing that? Because we have a lot of interested bakers in our community, and this is how it just happens. There was a need in the community for a senior center. We had the meeting room. It seats up to 100 people. There was a lot of space and opportunity there, so just started reaching out to people, see what they wanted to have in that meeting room. And with the need of having a senior center, they were operating out of a small building here in Walton County. It was actually a small trailer. And at that time, back 11 years ago or so, they were hoping to have a Tai Chi class. And so they came to the public library, looked at the meeting room, and absolutely, let's have it start a Tai Chi class. And it's changed, I believe, the lives of many people that have participated. In Tai Chi, at least they come back and say, my balance has improved, my health has improved, I'm calmer, and it has been continuing on ever since. So that's one of our new programs we're starting, is a nonfiction book club, meeting once a month and looking to tap into that audience that are nonfiction book readers and potential new nonfiction book readers. Another question that came across the desk the other day was, have you considered starting a women's defense class? Absolutely, let me look into that. And so I'm excited to say, out of Fort Walton Beach, the Martial Arts Academy, there the sensei will be presenting a women's defense class. 30 years he's been teaching for the class for women's defense. 53 years he's had his business as a martial arts instructor. So we're excited to be bringing that program here to the Coastal Branch Library, and hopefully we'll get a lot of more community coming in of the different ages, different interests, and hopefully that'll generate more interest and more questions to come across the desk. What would you like to have at your Coastal Branch Public Library? So we welcome you to the Coastal Branch Library. Our operating hours are Monday 8 to 5 and Tuesday through Saturday 9 to 5. Sunday we're closed. But for those 6 days out of the week, we hope you come in and visit our Coastal Branch Library. You can find more by visiting our website, waltonlibraries.com, that is plural.
Our libraries are funded through our annual operating budget through the Walton County Board of County Commissioners, with additional funds and grants from the state of Florida and the Federal Institute of Museum and Library Services. Although those are wonderful funding sources for us, there are needs that are not being met, and we depend on our Friends of the Library groups as 501c3 nonprofits to help fulfill those needs in our communities. That can look like program support, applying for grants that the county cannot receive, and making sure that needs are met and we're listening to our community and what they want in a community resource.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Meese, and I'm currently the president of the Friends of the Coastal Branch Library. First of all, I want to thank you for your interest in our docuseries and the history of our library, and I hope you've been able to enjoy all of our videos that we've produced. The Friends of the Coastal Branch Library is a 501c3, and our mission is to support the library and to bring enriching and interesting programs for all ages for residents and visitors alike. The Friends invite you to join us in these endeavors, one of which is we operate a bookshop within the library, and we sell at heavily discounted prices current, gently used books. We also have a bi-yearly book sale. We support 29 tiny libraries in our community and art exhibits throughout the year. Please consider joining the Friends. If you will visit our website at FOCBL, we have a membership application there. We have all of the things we do for the library, as well as a monthly calendar on our events, and it will show you volunteer opportunities. Please consider helping us in our bookshop, at our sales, at our cultural events, and any other way with suggestions and ideas. We would like to thank all of our talent that helped us produce these docuseries, and the St. Joe Community Foundation for helping us fund it, and for you supporting your local library.